Evacuation and health notification.
Thank you, Council President. To the left of the stage, up the stairs will take you out the back of the building. On the back of the council chambers, to your right, the stairs will take you out the front of the building. Just past that on the right, is the men's facility. And the stairs to the left is the ladies' facility. Please do not use the elevator in time of emergency.
Thank you, sir. Presentations, there are none. Moving to minutes. Move that the minutes of the April 11th, 2023 work session meeting with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force be approved as recorded.
So moved. Second.
Does it have to be with the amendment, the amended, is that right, the motion with the amended minutes, because we are given it?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yep, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Item B, move that the minutes of the April 11th, 2023 work session meeting with the Economic Development Commission be approved as recorded.
So moved.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. Item C, move that the minutes of the April 18th, 2023 open session meeting be approved as recorded.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 7, consider, discuss, and act upon the following possible appointments and reappointments. Planning Board reappointment with a term expiring of May 2026.
Mr. President, I move that the Town Council reappoint James D'Ambra to the Planning Board with a term expiring in May of 2026.
Second.
I apologize.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't talk.
Take your time.
Discussion? Well, none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Can I hand it down over there for a minute? Yeah. I'll be right back, right? No.
Okay, item number 8A, conduct a public hearing to consider and act upon sewer usage rate changes. I now declare that the public hearing is open.
Mr. Cleary?
Hi, good evening, Town Council members. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Kevin Cleary, Smithfield Town Engineer, for the record. Tonight, I am thankful the Town Council's considering a public hearing for adjustments to the sewer usage fund rates for service charges. The Sewer Authority has voted favorably upon a recommended action for the Town Council's consideration of the FY24 and out through FY28 sewer rates, with a sewer usage rate in the upcoming year of $425. They voted upon that matter, I believe it was in January, March. It was March. And the Town Council was requested to set the public hearing at the beginning of the month in April. The public hearing was duly advertised as such with the town clerk, and within the contents of the recommended actions for the council's consideration is a sewer fund rate study report that was presented by Barry Dunn, the town's consultant on the matter. And I will, if there's any preliminary questions amongst the council, I'm glad to answer those right now. But I would like to move the matter along to our rate consultant to kind of explain the ins and outs of the rate study, what they determined, what they studied, what they found out about the process. Just a little forward to this, we started this process in 2019 with another consultant who had passed away. And then we were prepared to approach the council through a public hearing process in 2020. With the onset of COVID, people rapidly losing their jobs and the financial disparity that came with that, that circumstance, we decided it was in the best interests of the community to delay this process, but recognizing that we're still running some aspects of the sewer authority operations overall budget with a structural deficit. We saw that this is a an ample time to now reconvene the matter, re-update the analysis, which the consultant has helped us prepare by looking at our finances and our accounting systems, and present the matter to the town council for further consideration through the public hearing process. So without further ado, I present.
Kevin, I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
What's the current rate?
Today, presently, the sewer authority charges annual sewer usage of $355 per year.
When is the last time there was an increase?
Vice President Kayonati, I believe it was 6 or 7 years ago. The sewer rates may have went up $5 or $10, and they saw minor incremental step increases back to the time since I've been here in 2007 as the town engineer. I've never really had to go through this process. I don't know how the revenue side of the sewer fund, enterprise fund, was predicted for rate adjustments in the past, but recognizing that we're starting to run into a structural deficit in the last several years, we saw that the need was incumbent to pursue this matter a little further. So without further ado, I'll present unless there's any further open questions. Jesse Myatt from Barry Dunn, he's our consultant. I'll move over to the this one.
All right, as the video is starting to warm up here, good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Jesse Myatt. I'm a manager with Barry Dunn, and as Kevin alluded to, I've had the pleasure of working with the town manager, the town engineer, and the entire town project team over the past several months to establish an analysis to determine revenue requirements and provide some rate guidance for the sewer enterprise fund in order to give the overview of the required rates that are going to be necessary to satisfy those revenue requirements, fund capital to the level necessary, as well as maintain a sufficient fund balance to ensure business and service continuity should it be needed for the next 5 fiscal years. And we'll be talking about fiscal 24 through fiscal 28 for our purposes here this evening. We prepared a brief presentation going to highlight some of the core components from our findings, outline some of the rate scenarios developed to satisfy those findings, as well as offer some recommendations for your consideration here this evening. So just a brief background about our work that's been performed. Back in February, we partnered with the town to prepare this revenue requirement analysis and rate guidance for the enterprise fund, looking at everything that's going to be needed for the fiscal to satisfy those revenue requirements for fiscal 24 through 28. We established an ongoing relationship with many staff throughout the town as we prepared the analysis, really looking at the cost of service. What is it costing to provide collection and treatment services to the areas serviced throughout the town? Developed fee level scenarios designed to satisfy those revenue requirements that we determined, and really looking at maintaining not only sufficient funding for capital, but that long-term, all-important reserve fund balance, again, to ensure business and service continuity should it be needed. So over the course of the last 3 or 4 months, we've done that analysis. We've compiled all findings and staff feedback, financial and operational analysis, put all of our methodologies and how we arrived at those rate scenarios into a project report that I suspect that you've all been provided, and developed that cost of service model. And of course, here we are in May presenting this evening.
For the council's convenience, I have enclosed printouts of this presentation for your use. Distribute those to council members.
Thank you.
No problem. And, excuse me, as those are being distributed, we're going to just touch upon over the next couple of slides some of the core components of the initial findings from the analysis. And of course, there is much greater detail in the project report that was prepared. As the town engineer alluded to out of the gate, we are projecting a structural deficit based on past performance and future projections in the Sewer Enterprise Fund. You can see there on the left in graphical format, we're coming in at about almost $200,000 short on a fiscal year basis, based on, again, past performance and current projections for the sources and uses for the fund. Over that past couple of years, looking at fiscal 22, which of course is complete and closed, and fiscal 23, as we're coming towards the end, we're looking at average projected revenue of about $3.1 million, on top of that projected expense of almost $3.3 million. So again, that $200,000 deficit. That projected revenue shortfall is projected at current rates and not considering any significant capital investments currently. In looking at that in table format, you can go ahead and see that where we ended up in fiscal 22 at a shortfall of about 600,000. That estimated 2023 is a bit misleading in that we probably are going to see a shortfall in 23 in that we haven't yet realized year-end accounting types of allocations that usually hit the enterprise fund, things such as indirect charges and things of that nature. During the course of the analysis, we didn't uncover anything that would point us otherwise to say that we're going to have a revenue windfall for the end of 23. So while it may not be as severe as what happened there in 22, we certainly will most likely see a shortfall for 23. And again, more importantly, 24 through 28, as you can see outlined there in table format, we're starting to project significant deficits, not only in the structural O&M, the operations, the day-to-day, but when we start to layer in deferred capital maintenance and some of the system improvements that are going to be needed and the expenses that are going to need to be realized to perform those improvements and keep the system operating effectively and sufficiently, you can see kind of that continued decline. And in those shortfalls are going to significantly impact the reserve fund balance should no rate adjustments be considered. So just looking here along the lines of that enterprise reserve fund balance, you can see as it stands today about $3.4 million, which is a healthy balance given the annual cost to operate the fund. So almost a little bit more than 100% of annual or fiscal year funding in that reserve fund balance, which is a healthy level, and we want to really continue to maintain that at it. When we work with a lot of folks, it's that 80 to 90 to 100% of annual operating expenditures is a good target for fund balance. Should no rate adjustments be made, we can see that continued hit to the fund balance over the future fiscal years, projected all the way out to fiscal 28, which we dip back below $1 million, which is a severe red flag for an operation of this size. What's driving that is mainly projected increases in utilities, projected about a 5% year-over-year increase, as naturally things are just getting more expensive across the board and day to day. This is no different for the operation and maintenance of the system through the enterprise fund. Over the course of those 5 fiscal years, we're expecting about a $60,000 increase in those types of expenses. Repairs and maintenance, we're expecting about a $30,000 increase over that 5-year period. And projected overall operations, this is everything, the contracted vendor expense and things of that nature to operate the collection and treatment services, significant increases over the next 5 fiscal years to the tune of about $441,000. And again, those projected capital allocations, the needed investment that's going to have to start to be made to keep the system functioning properly, about $500,000 each fiscal year for the next 5 fiscal years. So on top of that, in order to start to get things right-sized to meet those revenue requirements, again, fund capital and maintain that reserve fund balance, we put together here 3 scenarios that we'll share with you this evening, although ultimately I think we ended up on 6 total. Some of them are outliers on both ends of the spectrum. If we look at increasing the unit rate charge to $400 from $355 in fiscal '24, you can see that's about a 13% increase over today's levels, and then 6 to 5% increases throughout future fiscal years. In doing so, if we go to 400 in fiscal '24, you can see that we start to chip away at that structural deficit, eliminating it projected by the end of '26, the start of '27, where we start to see contributions back to the fund balance. In going from 355 to 425 in fiscal '24, you can see that we speed up the elimination of the projected shortfalls. Again, most likely we'll have a projected shortfall in '24 and '25, but we then return to the black and contributions back to fund balance in '26, should we go to 425. And then finally, just for consideration, 450 all but eliminates that structural deficit in a fiscal year. We can be back to contributions to fund balance and funding things, everything to the level that it needs to be, including capital by fiscal '25, and allow the fund balance to increase from there on. You can see that 355 to 450 is a substantial increase of about 27%, but again, everything trails back off to about 5 to 6% year over year after that. So, and looking at everything and really running the numbers, talking with staff and going back through the sources and uses for the fund, looking at what's going to be needed to operate and maintain things in the future, we really feel that 425, that's scenario 2 as it's presented here tonight and in the project report, would be the best way forward for the fund. Not too steep of an increase out of the gate. Certainly the fund, given its substantial fund balance or sufficient fund balance, at the moment, can maintain a 425 rate until that structural deficit is eliminated in about FY '26 and not severely impact operations. So that would be 425 in fiscal '24, ending all the way up to 525 in fiscal '28. Yep, we can go right to the next one. And in adopting scenario 2, should the council consider that the best path forward, we can see that we're able to not only fund operations, the day-to-day O&M, invest in capital, but we also, most importantly, maintain that reserve fund balance. And again, that's essential to ensure that business and service continuity should something significant happen. And I'll open it up to questions or discussion about anything that's been presented.
Kevin, I have a couple of questions. The reserve fund balance, is that set by who? The town? Is it set by state?
I believe that's government accounting standards, that may come from Jesse. Do you have an answer for response for that?
In many cases, it is the ceiling for a fund balance is set by state statute or local policy or a combination of both. In this instance, it is just the set policy of the town. I wasn't aware of any absolute policy identifying what a maximum fund balance ceiling would be in the course of our analysis, but that is certainly something that is a common practice across the board.
Kevin, when was the last time the rates were increased? I may have missed it.
Councilman Tassoni, I have not had I have not had any partakings in the rate increases on the sewer fund in the past. This is my first time doing this. I would defer to Mr. Manager Rossi for the response.
I think it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, they went up $5. Before that, it was probably $5 another couple of years before that. So that it's never been to this point. It always was kind of the forgotten soldier, and it was time to have the full analysis of the plan and the infrastructure and the enterprise fund to see what's the best direction to go.
Well, the analysis is good, but if my math is correct, it's a $70 increase per household. Now, you just indicated yourself that it was because of COVID, people are out of work, and we're going to raise it $70. You do not have my support on that. You don't. I'm not doing that, not $70.
No, I think $70 is too big an increase for 1 year. I agree with
Yeah, hang
Councilman
on one second,
Tassoni.
I wasn't finished. Although we split it into 4 different payments to help the residents, as the councilman said, $70 is way, you're out of the league. This is, if I had to increase it, in my own opinion, maybe I would go to 400. Maybe, but you haven't sold me on that yet. But, I mean, everyone's hitting it tough. I mean, all the utilities are going up.
Insurance
It's
premiums are
just,
going up, everything across the
everything's
board is
going
going
up. I
up.
mean, you're looking at 25% next year in insurance premiums, 25%. I mean, enough is enough. Just my opinion.
Kevin, you mentioned if something significant happens, when's the last time something that happened that we needed to use the fund balance? Just,
That's a great question, Council President, and we have. For a few examples, on the Camp Street pump station, we had to replace the force main that services that pump station up to the sewer treatment plant. That was 3 years ago. What we did to fund that project is we pulled capital on earmarked projects and reallocated during the fiscal year to steer capital away. 2 years ago, we had to replace some primary effluent pump spooling pipes at the wastewater facility primary treatment system, where to the tune, I think it was $175,000. Again, we had to steer earmarked capital improvement funds away from installing a covered primary tank at the facility to fund that emergency. So we've been fortunate where we haven't had the opportunity, or we haven't had the need to really pull from the capital reserve in an effort to maintain that for something that really goes wrong, something that might be $1 million or north of $1 million. Luckily, some of these hard hits we've had have only been, several $100,000, just south of $100,000 in a couple of cases. And there was one other instance where I know we had to steer funds away from an earmarked project to fund kind of a more sludge containment system at the wastewater treatment system. That sludge storage containment system had a bridge deck on it that failed. We had to do structural improvements and rehabilitate the tank system that was for that. Well, again, we had to steer other capital funds for that project from ones that were earmarked that year as actually a capital improvement. So those are some examples of what has happened. I can't speak for what will happen.
Exactly,
But obviously, I think in the best interest of the community is to maintain a healthy reserve and one that's resilient for the future, as costs are expected to continue to increase throughout the next term of the service contract, not just in service fees, but also, like Jesse said in the presentation, utilities, our insurances. Councilman Tassoni said they're going up for everybody, 20%, and that's just on homeowners. I'm sure the municipality is going to see an increase in insurance premiums that, this is a heavy liability asset that the town has to see. So to fiscally manage, and I apologize, I do want to apologize. In the presentation that I presented, I kind of scrambled at the last minute to get it. We did have a slide that included the NBC user rate study that was also rate analysis that was presented by Narragansett Bay Commission. And I don't know if that's in the printed packages you have or not. It's in the slides. And there was several different versions of that. And I apologize, but I did want to make a point to emphasize that, our rates here in Smithfield, as compared to the rest of the state, we're in the lower 1/3. It's great that we've afforded our users and the rate system that economic windfall for as long as we have. But recognizing that the average sewer user rate throughout the state is north of $600 annually, and some communities don't offer the quarterly billing like we now have enabled our residents to do in the next upcoming year. It is a recommendation on the sewer authority that, we see a slight bump in the overall rate for the upcoming year, and then gradual increases to try to stabilize the structural deficit that we're experiencing, and build that capital reserve account for the future. There's obviously tools and there's options the council has, and we know that you'll choose the best one.
Is it taken into effect, the reserve fund getting interest on top of the money that is in the reserve fund? You know what I'm saying?
Through the president, yes, Councilman. When establishing the revenue requirements, we do take into consideration not only fees and charges revenue, but all revenue. That would be interest and income on investments and things of that nature. So yes, everything is considered as it does hit the enterprise fund within the specific sewer-related revenue and expense.
So it's not a stagnant reserve, it's moving every month.
Absolutely, and technically, in theory, a reserve fund balance moves every day. It's a point-in-time calculation. However, we want to look at the aggregate in the long term. But yes, you are correct, and that was taken into consideration.
And to Kevin, to your point, I respect you immensely, but I really don't care what the other cities and towns do.
Sure,
I care about these people out here
as do I.
and how much they have to pay, so I don't know what the rest of the council feels like, but I'm not going for the 425.
Is this something that, let's say we do 400 this year, and next year, things are going better than let's say we're off on our analysis, but then we don't have to increase it that year. Is there scenarios that can happen?
Of course, we
Or
always
we
have other
lock into
options.
this for 5 years?
Absolutely, Council President. We always have other options. We can revisit the rate structure again another year, 2 years, and see where things have dialed in with the boosted increase in sewer user revenue on that side of the equation, based off of current year expenses that are coming up, and see where things lie again. And maybe we revisit this in another year or two. And, if a more mild increase is recommended at that time, you have that luxury as the town council. You guys control the finances, and it's your ability to protect the taxpayers in this community.
Randy, I have a question. If someone puts a in-law on their property, and they pay twice or just once?
Now, commercial properties, those are metered?
Well, it's not metered on the sewer side of the equation. It's metered, we use the water utilities metered rates as to what goes into the building, we assume goes out, unless they have a deduct meter to prove otherwise for irrigation or some type of process use that they're not discharging it into the sewer system. There is credits for deduct meters that are allowable. Those are the exceptions rather than the rule. There's not many of those throughout the community.
Councilman Tassoni just touched upon a very interesting point that I'd like to kind of explore a little bit more. Is there any way that we can push or continue the meeting until the next one? Because I'd like to explore that a little bit more about the individuals dwelling on a property and if they have to pay it once or twice. Is that something where we?
It would be, we can explore, it'd be a separate piece of this. This is just the rate portion of it. We'd have to consider reevaluating the ordinance and how the units are calculated and so forth. And what you could actually consider is if we consider a scenario of the rate approval tonight, maybe do either 2 or 3 year plan with that and not go the whole 5. And then we address the ordinance aspect of things in the units. And then that could go into the calculation for those future years. But my couple of recommendations is, one, that we move forward with the rate so we can start planning everything out, because we do need to pass the budget and then start planning for the billing and so forth. 2, that we look at either a 2 or 3 year scenario of what we want to see for the upcoming year, and then maybe a year after, either 4 or 2 years of what that rate would be. And then we address it after maybe the 3rd year. And then at the same time, if we look at the number of units that we're capturing, that's one more piece that would just add to the revenue, and we can factor that in very easily, because everything's based in all the calculations that Jesse put together in unit costs.
Can we meet in the middle somewhere? I believe Vice President Ionati, didn't you mention just doing up to 405 last meeting?
Yeah, I think that we need to spread it out. We can't be running deficits, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Because then we're depleting our fund balance, and when something happens and we need to repair the facility, we'll have to go out to bonding, and that'll really cost us a fortune. So we cannot run deficits. We have to get the budget in balance. So the question is, what's the best way to do that with the least amount of burden on the residents?
Correct.
So, maybe we could do 400 this year and, 435 or 440 next year, and then keep going until we at least get it in balance. And perhaps we need to have a little more because we need to make up the fact that we're taking money out of the fund balance as well, because we're reducing that every time we don't balance the budget.
That's correct, sir. Yes, sir. I'll work with whatever is provided with the sewer usage fund on the revenue side of it to try to best balance expenses in any given year, no matter what the council approves. And that's what I have to work with. That's what will be worked with. But I do want to thank you for, taking the matter up into consideration, recognizing that costs are increasing across the board for everybody. And the sewer fund is not immune to those changes that are happening around us. And I kindly request your consideration tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion if you like.
Sorry, this is still a public hearing. We have to
Okay.
close the public hearing. So anyone else want to come up and talk? Right? The microphone, sir.
Frank O'Connell, Lakeside Drive. I had a couple questions for the town engineer. Kevin, how old is the plant?
The treatment facility went in service in 1978.
1978. So it's about close to, what, 35 years old? 45. In my 40-year work experience, I was a machinery underwriter for FM Global. And I will tell you that some of the worst, nastiest breakout mechanical failures happen to be at sewer treatment plants. First of all, it's wet, it's heavy, it's stinky, and it's hard to work on. Every piece of equipment in that plant has to be explosion-proof rated because of methane. That means every piece of electrical equipment costs 10 to 12 or even more times than a normal electrical equipment to install. That right-angle bottom gear at the bottom of the tank that does the turning is an extremely expensive piece of equipment. His average mean time between failure, in my experience, is about 15 years. That's a very expensive total plant interruption to fix that. As a resident, I consider $1 a day for sewage extremely cheap. If you have to rent a porta potty, you can't rent a porta potty for $1 a day. If you have to have your sewer septic system pumped out, if you're on septic, you can't get it for that kind of money. All I'm asking that you do is make sure that we have enough contingency and ability to respond to an emergency without having to go to any emergency bonding or anything that we're not prepared for. It's a vital service to the town. You cannot expect it to be so lean and mean that you can't respond to the normal wear and tear for an old facility. You're dealing with water, which is corrosive. Have we done a metal thickness test? We've done no metal thickness test. So those of you that have owned a boat, you know what a boat is, right? Bring on another 1,000 because it's in the water. That's what BOAT stands for. Multiply that by a number 3 zeros for anything dealing with tankage with nasty water. So the metal has eroded 40 plus years. Wear and tear. No one's painting the inside of the tank. No one's painting or controlling the galvanized stainless steel shafts or any of that stuff. The price of electric gear has gone up 3 times. We are in a flood zone, and I know that they have to do improvements to meet flood requirements for this plant. Is that correct? Yeah. So we're in a flood zone. We're the only water treatment plant on the Woonasquatucket River. The town doesn't need a black eye by not having a very sound, robust septic system or sewer treatment plant. I would ask that you please do everything you can to make sure that we're robustly founded, because it's well cared for. But it's like, how many of you are driving a 45-year-old car every day? That's what we're driving. We're driving a 45-year-old sewer treatment plant every day for every resident in town. So please make sure that it's robust and well cared for and well funded. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
James Kevin McNeil is very impressive. I'm almost afraid to go up and follow that. Full disclosure, I'm the chairman of the sewer authority. And yes, $1 a day is not a whole lot to pay if the toilets in this town stopped working for any reason. You guys would, I'm sure, authorize a $10 million fix. Just the other point I'd like to make in my years on the authority, Kevin mentioned one of the repairs was $300,000, I believe it was Camp Street. There was an alternative that could have been done instead of that $300,000 fixed. It's fixed for the next 10, 20, 30 years. We could have spent probably $40,000 and put a Band-Aid on it. This council over the last 2 or 3 years, almost without exception, has gone the fixed route. And one thing I have advocated at every meeting I've attended is do not Band-Aid it, fix it. Fix it for 20 years, fix it for 40 years. And largely it's been town manager and the town council. You guys, for the last 4 or 5 years, are to be commended on an unbelievable, exceptionally job well done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll close the public hearing. Nope.
Michael.
Sorry, Mike.
Good evening, Michael Moen from 18 Maple Crest Drive. I believe our comp plan called for this study, and it got done. I'm here because we're talking about rates, and I've had a question for a number of years from my bill. I'm not here to complain at all. I know how fortunate I am to be on our system. Believe me, I do. Kevin knows too. And I thank everybody, council and our staff, for doing a great job. My question is more of something that's on the bill that I was wondering if we could get an answer to. It's something called industrial pretreatment. Now, my bill is for a residence. And so I decided to do a little investigating. And I went to the comp plan and found that on page 119 of our comp plan that the town is calling for the creation of an industrial pretreatment program. And it's outlined in the objectives, goals, and policies and actions that this should be created. It also goes on to describe that industrial wastewater is significantly different from the standard residential wastewater. So then I went to our town charter, and in chapter 361, A361, Sewer Authority, Article 2, definitions, industrial wastes are defined as from industrial processes, trade, or business, distinct from domestic or sanitary wastes. Additionally, in Chapter 294, sewers user charges in the town charter, computation, Section C1, it outlines this charge for residents to pay. And I'm not complaining about the price at all. It's a $10 fee. I'm just curious as to why residents like myself are being charged a fee for industrial pretreatment. That's all I had. I thought maybe somebody here tonight could answer that question. And again, it's a splendid job, a splendid system. You're right, a little over $1 a day. And I know the fund needs to be revitalized, and the course that the council picks, as somebody just described, is usually the right one. You've done a good job of keeping the system financed, and in cooperation with your residents and businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the public comments. To my knowledge, the industrial pretreatment program fee is an earmarked fund that every sewer user ratepayer contributes to. What that does is ensures overall continuity in the system for industrial users and commercial users to make sure that they're discharging waste into the system that we have the ability to treat. There's been discharges into the system in the past where industrial users deliver us a waste that causes process upsets, permit excursions, or violations in accordance with the Clean Water Act. Those are not wastes that we're able to treat at the facility, so they have to set up a pretreatment program. They do pay more excessive fees than the rest of the community, but it's an overall pool that gets paid to the industrial pretreatment program to monitor sewers throughout the community, do spot check manhole sampling programs throughout the community to make sure our average wastewater loadings and the constituents within the wastewater are uniform throughout the community, and we can better identify where the industrial hotspots are. So it is a nominal fee, but it's a pool, it's a collected pool that all the program users have to pay, kind of like your universal service fund on your cable bill. Everybody kind of has to pay that bill in order to use it. I don't know the exact reason why, but I do know that it goes towards the pool to run the industrial pretreatment program, report it accordingly, and follow up with industry, and everybody pays a fair share.
Would you change it? Say a service fee?
Any ordinance.
We can look at that at the same time with the ordinance.
Is the fee higher for industrial users?
That I'm not aware of. I think it's pretty uniform across the board. I'd have to look into the revenue side of past budgets to see if, again, it's a nominal fee. It's like $10 or $15 on the sewer user rate, beyond the standard treatment charge.
Kevin, is that $10 in a separate account?
Again, I'd have to defer to the manager on that.
It's allocated in and offset by the expenses that come specifically with that. So it all comes in one deposit, but then that portion is considered in what is expended out for it.
And there may be regulatory requirements too, I think in accordance with our RIPD's permit through the state of Rhode Island DEM, that requires us to have a separate pretreatment program established, funded and operated that all users in the system have to pay for. I believe that is the earmark of that allocation.
Thank you. Pleasure of the council. I've closed it. Did I close it?
I think we started to, and then
Public hearing's closed. Pleasure of the council.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we split the 70 and make it $35, so it would come up to $390.
Second. Motion.
Yeah, I
So there's a motion on the floor, which
Yeah.
is seconded by Councilman Kilda. There's a discussion on that motion. We'll take that motion up first, and then.
All right, discussion on the motion.
I just wonder if that's going to be enough, because we're talking about something like $1 million deficit a year. Could you give us an idea of what that would do, or should we go a little higher? Because we're so far behind. I mean, rates haven't been raised in a number of years.
Yes, Counselor. The question of making it 390 and that satisfying the revenue requirements, looking at it in isolation for a fiscal year is you probably would be able to satisfy that. What that does is delays the return to eliminating the deficit, which, absent of any large emergencies or investments that need to be made, you're certainly going to be okay. We had prepared a $400 scenario, and in speaking with staff, I did also feel that would probably be sufficient on the lower end, which is why we gave you a low, a middle, and a high, 400 to 425 to 450. However, the council does decide. I think, and it is my opinion, having done the analysis, that $390 would certainly be sufficient for a year. Bringing that back to the table in preparation for fiscal 25 and looking at, where the revenues and expenses are shaking up for the next fiscal year, should be able to consider another necessary adjustment at that point. However, if you do want to eliminate that deficit within that second fiscal year and not carry it into what would be fiscal 26 based on projections, you will need to come up to at least 400, and that would probably get you there mid-fiscal year. 425 would probably eliminate that in 2 fiscal years. 390 is going to prolong. You're going to be 3.5 fiscal years out for the structural portion, and that's absent of any significant investments that need to be made or capital projects that get expended.
Just a recommendation to piggyback that, if it's helpful, for a couple of reasons. By having the funds in there, we'd be able to pay for those capital items on a pay-as-you-go basis versus ever, trying to minimize ever having to borrow again for the sewer plant. And in the other turn, if we do need to borrow for a larger project, by having those funds available, that's also going to help reduce the rate in which we borrow for those funds. So you're going to generate savings there. Then also too, by getting that revenue in at the time that we are seeing the benefit of the market right now and getting better investments on our dollars. So by having the funds in, I'd ask if the council would consider to go to the 400, and then kind of the scenario one that was put together, if we could look for a couple of years to kind of plan out.
Yeah, I'd move to amend the motion of Councilman Tassoni to increase the sewer fee to $400 for fiscal year 24.
Second.
Discussion? Will the next 5 years be increments, as they stated, or?
Well, I mean, it's up to the council if they want to consider the 1 year or 1 or 2, 2 or 3 years, just to kind of plan it out. And that way, the other thing too is people could budget for that, in their homes too, to budget for the increase, if we can lay that out. But it's completely up to.
What are your thoughts on 3 years?
I think so. And, not speaking for the council or the manager, there always is the option to revisit that on a budget construct basis at the end of the next fiscal year and make adjustments as required. But by locking in that 3 years, at least you get a plan of attack and some, consistent revenue coming in, so you can make those decisions, whether it be O&M decisions or capital investment decisions, as well as back to the conversation of maintaining that fund balance. So yeah, absolutely. I think a 400 would be the minimum, and then consider the step increases for 3 years. But certainly can be revisited as part of the budget development process, I would imagine. Certainly not speaking for the manager on that portion.
Thank you. So there's a motion on the table. Any more discussion?
This is for the $400. Let's start with the 390.
390 was the first motion. Why don't we break it up? He made a motion to amend. Let's take them in two.
Okay.
First motion.
It's 390.
It was 390 for, seconded by Councilmember Kilgore. There was discussion on that motion.
All those in favor on that motion?
Aye.
Nay?
Nay.
The motion fails.
Okay, I move that we increase the sewer use billing increase, starting with $400 in fiscal year 24, with $25 incremental increases for the next 2 fiscal years after fiscal year 24.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor?
No.
Motion passes. Moving on to item B, schedule a public hearing on June 6, 2023 to consider and act upon amendments to Chapter 294-17 of the Code of Ordinance entitled Sewer Compliance. sewer computation. Apologize for that.
All right, let me switch gears here. Thank you, Town Council, for the last item agenda, and thank you for this one as well. It was brought to our attention last year due to an anomaly in sewer use billing in the easterly side of town, closer to Lincoln, where a sewer usage rate bill was issued to a particular user, and the bill was astronomically high because they had water leakage in their facility. So they paid their water bill, and the town council voted on the matter to reduce that individual's user rate based on that anomaly because their sewer usage discharges into the Narragansett Bay District, but within our community. They were receiving the full sewer usage bill from the town, but not receiving our wastewater treatment services, just conveyance and collection, that's all. So the town council voted favorably upon the matter to charge them approximately 35% of the sewer usage charge, kind of a multiplier. And that just remedied that one bill for that one fiscal year. Looking further into that part of the system, which we have collection system, but we don't provide treatment services, we flagged approximately 11 properties that tip their sewage into the Narragansett Bay Commission, which we do not provide treatment services for. And to keep those sewer usage invoices, those 11 mostly commercial properties, industrial commercial properties, more uniform with that practice in mind, it was suggested that we consider those 11 properties for a multiplier as well on the district going forward to be amended into the Code of Ordinances in the Chapter 294-17 under computation. So at this time, this is just a request to schedule a public hearing. I've provided a draft ordinance amendment for the council to consider at a later date, which will be made publicly available for interested parties to comment on. Also attached is a draft public hearing notice along with the sewer authority's vote on the matter, which occurred in December of last year. Again, following that one user that kind of brought this whole issue to our attention. So that's just the history, brief synopsis of the scenario. And at this time, the sewer authority kindly requests the council's consideration of scheduling a public hearing out to June 6th.
How many users does this affect?
Approximately 11, Vice President.
11.
And I do believe there is a list, I apologize, the spreadsheet might be a little small on your copies, but it's printed in 11 by 17, it's a little larger. The ones that are highlighted gray in that table are the affected residents in that whole collection area that discharge into our collection system and then eventually flow into Narragansett Bay. The other ones that are on that list are directly tied to NBC's line.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President.
This is to schedule a public hearing.
So moved.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item C, schedule a public hearing on June 6, 2023 to consider and act upon amendments to Chapter 126 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Animals, Section 126-8, 126-10, 126-16, 126-20, 126-26, 126-45, and 126-53. And this is sponsored by Councilman John Tassoni Jr.
So moved.
Discussion?
This is just a scheduled public hearing. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. Item D, schedule a public hearing on June 6, 2023 to consider and act upon amendment to Section 4.3, Table of Uses, Section 4.4M, Adult Recreational Use Cannabis, and Section 5.11, Solar Energy Systems of the zoning ordinances.
So moved.
All those in favor?
I'd like to mention something about the cannabis one. I think that we might have some problems with that, and we need to take a look at it before we actually do the public hearing. Specifically, what are the definitions of cannabis? Would that include, we have businesses in town that do that sell the CBD oil. We want to make sure that we don't want to be closing businesses or put them out of business. So we want to take a close look at the definition of cannabis. Does it mean marijuana? Does it mean more than marijuana? Or what does it actually mean? Other than that, we can go forward and schedule a public hearing.
Thank you.
There was a motion and a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item E, consider scheduling a show cause hearing on Tuesday, May 16, 2023, to consider and act upon the possible suspension, revocation, or other sanction regarding the listed mobile food truck license due to non-renewal or non-compliance with the conditions of renewal.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to licenses. Consider, discuss, and act upon approving the annual renewal of 2 holiday sales licenses as listed as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances. This is for Target Store, T1404, and Smithfield Fitness.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item B, consider, discuss, and act upon approving the annual renewal of 2 massage established licenses as listed as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item C, consider, discuss, and act upon approving the annual renewal of 2 massage therapy licenses as listed as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item D, consider, discuss, and act upon approving a 2 one-day special event licenses for Watlau Bud, I apologize for this, Budhofath? Okay, of Rhode Island Inc. for a loud New Year celebration at 88 Limerock Road on the following dates.
So moved.
Would you like to come up and say anything about the event? Or you don't have to, okay. We had a second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item E, consider, discuss, and act upon the annual renewal of 2 peddlers licenses as listed as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances.
So moved.
Second.
She had a quick question about this. Does this authorize them to sell at Deerfield Park?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item F, consider, discuss, and act upon approving one-day special event license for Smithfield Classic Cars and Auto Sales for a car show at 278 Douglas Pike on the following date, Saturday, May 27, 2023, from 9:30 to 3 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. Item G, consider, discuss, and act upon approving 3 one-day special event licenses for the Smithfield Parks and Recs Department for a food truck event, 1 William J. Hawkins Junior Trail on the following dates.
So moved.
That's fine. I'm not gonna list them.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Old business, there is none. New business. Consider, discuss, and act upon poll petitions from Rhode Island Energy Company to install new poles on Riverview Avenue and Business Park Drive.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. How many stations right now are in Smithfield, EV charging stations? And who is requesting this?
So the poll petition itself is from National Grid. Unfortunately, Mr. Allen had a service to go to this evening and is not here. I'm not sure the number of EV charging stations that there are in town. Because the petition to us is specifically National Grid. I'm not seeing.
So it's going where Cool Air Creations is over there. So is it the businesses that want this, or we don't know?
We don't. That's not our purview of the request. It's just us allowing them to put the polls in.
That's a poll.
Yes.
The EV charging station?
Well, the actual, the poles to power it.
Gotcha.
The one on Riverview is bent. The top of Riverview and Pleasant View is really bent. I'm assuming that's one of the poles that they're gonna,
I think so. Yeah, they have the existing pole right there, she's moving in between the two.
yeah.
You got a question?
Yes, please come up, state your name and address. Thank you.
It doesn't pertain to this, but it pertains to the request earlier about the car show. What I'd also like to have is a rain date for the following Saturday if the first one gets canceled.
I didn't read that. I'm sorry. Yeah, June 3rd, 2023, the rain date's on there.
Correct. And it's, okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, but I'm misreading that.
And it's a fundraiser too for.
Awesome.
All right, thank you.
Look forward to it.
There was a motion and a second.
Discussion's done? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item B, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement for fiscal years 2024 and 2025 with the Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation for the disposal of solid waste and recycling material.
So moved.
Andy, do you have anything on this? All right.
So moved.
Well, I'll second it to start the discussion.
Sure.
Let's say we vote against this, what happes?
We can't, we have to find a new spot to put our
You're
waste.
gonna have to pick up a lot of garbage.
Is this an offer we can't refuse?
It kind of is, to be honest too, so they've worked with the communities on these increases. Originally, they were trying to do it a year or two ago when they locked it in to maintain at the same level. So, we have representation from the municipalities on the board as well. So they're trying to blend it, and it's kind of, they did the same type of rate study as we did with the sewer, and really to make sure to be able to keep the operation of the plant as long as, the facility, for as long as they possibly can.
And I saw in here where we're required by state law to use the landfill, we can't use anywhere else. So
Correct.
we wouldn't even be able to dispose of trash at all without approving this, correct?
Unfortunately not, sir. So you were definitely right. It's an offer we cannot refuse.
Do we have more paint can and those type of events planned than last year?
Yes, our recycling coordinator, Melissa Shappett, is always looking to expand, and every single one of the events are well responded to. I mean, the lines are, going throughout the whole facility and nonstop from the hour they open to the hour they close.
Great, thank you.
We had a motion,
Yeah,
there a second?
There was a second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Item C, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing an update of the police and fire pension funds investment policy as recommended by the Police and Fire Pension Committee.
Thank you, Council President. At our last meeting of the Police and Fire Pension Committees, we had our investment advisor, Ken Goodrow, who also was at the meeting with the actuaries a couple of weeks back. And based on our current portfolio and looking at where the market is and how volatile it is, we needed to adjust the asset allocation to really, work to the favor of both of the funds. And that's what's recognized in here, as well as starting to address the other part that came up at the meeting was about reducing our assumed rate of return from 7.5 for both down to 7.25. So it's taking a more conservative approach to protect the life of both of those funds.
Thank you.
Move passage.
Seconded.
Do we have a discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Item D, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing the town manager to purchase 12 laptop computers through the Massachusetts Higher Education Commission F505 for the East Smithfield Neighborhood Center, an amount not to exceed $14,359.32.
Thank you, Council President. So this item before you is part of a grant that was received by the town for the neighborhood center. So what it is it's considered for the broadband concept of expanding broadband to all residents. And this will give us the opportunity to supply laptops throughout the center and to allow for whether it's the kids after school or people trying to apply for jobs or training for seniors. It's just going to give us the flexibility to have them in the center. And then another part at a later point will be the actual Wi-Fi and so forth technology inside the center. So this is fully funded by the CDBG grant for broadband.
They can't take them out, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
What about this Massachusetts higher ed? Is that where the grant was from?
No, sir. It's one of the purchasing collaboratives that are approved contract by the Attorney General's office. It's one of the larger groups that go out to bid for products. So they professionally went out to bid for numerous items, one of them being these laptops. So they guarantee to get the lowest price based on the quantity that they purchase. We're only buying 12 of them. So we're able to piggyback their benefit of purchase for our small quantity.
It's so nice that the state would go to Massachusetts.
I know. Actually, a lot of the times.
Very nice of them.
Yes.
It's always perplexing. I don't understand why when we go out to bid for these things, and, you know, we normally will piggyback on X amount of people, so we get things in bulk. It would be cheaper. You can Google the Dell laptop, it's the same exact price I bought one off Amazon right now. Like it's fine, it's from a grant, it's not taxpayer money, but, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. So moved.
Yeah, it's a lot.
We have a second?
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item E, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a bid award for concession services at the Smithfield Ice Rink.
Hello, Council. TJ Tully, the ice rink director. Oh, excuse my glasses here. I gotta bring this a little closer. The current ice rink concessions agreement is due to expire, well, it did expire at the end of April. So at the Tuesday, March 21st meeting, the town council approved an RFP for new concession services, a new 2-year contract with an option for an additional 2 years. The RFP was advertised until April 18th. And the RFP deadline, only one proposal was submitted. Has been noted that there were 34 companies that reviewed the proposal, but only one was submitted. The evaluation committee has recommended the town council award the concession services to, at the Smithfield Municipal Ice Rink to Cagney Food Services, who is the existing vendor. They met the minimum bid at $15,600 for the first 2 years, and if the town approves, an additional 2 years at $17,400. I'll take any questions.
Is that typical? 34 companies look at it, only one makes a bid? That's a little strange.
I guess in this case, I don't know for sure. Maybe the town manager can.
In a normal situation, this is kind of an odd request because we're asking to get someone to pay us a minimum amount of dollars that, you know, on that bidding system, it's a nationwide system. So it could be somebody in California looking at it that they're not going to, you know, run a concession stand in Smithfield. So it's a wide range. It's beneficial in situations of purchasing things and services that are more on a regular basis. This is kind of an oddity setup.
We did have an additional local vendor that also inquired about it, but they did not bid on it, so.
What about previous years? Has it been more than one?
There have been in the past, not recently. I think, you know, the COVID situation doesn't help in some respects with this type of business that was shut down for a while, so.
Sure, that's understandable.
But hopefully they're back on their feet.
What's the hurt of rebidding?
Timing wise, because the contract's already expired. I mean, the council could make a motion to go back out to bid and continue using the vendor, you know, to make sure that we get the revenue in, because there's no reason for the gentleman to continue to pay us to be there.
Plus, in my experience, most recently, at least in the last 2 cycles, we've had 1 to 2 bids. I think that's a lot of exercise to get maybe the same result, unfortunately.
I like exercise.
Sure.
TJ, these two options, if we can, option two, that'd be a full approval.
If the town approves it, it's a 4-year contract. From what he's paying right now, this dollar value is an increase in the first 2 years, and it's an additional increase in the second 2 years. So the rink will gain more revenue as the contract goes on.
I make a motion to go to option 2.
Second.
Option 2,
What does that mean?
4 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any discussion?
Have you had them before? You've used them in the past?
Cagney Food Services, they're actually the original vendor. Then it switched out a couple of times. They've been the existing vendor since 2019, so.
So you like them then?
Yes, they do a good job, for sure,
Cool, thank you.
especially when we call them last minute.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item F.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a request for proposals for concession services at Deerfield Park, subject to final review by the town solicitor.
Good evening, Council. Bobby Kane, Parks and Recreation. So this is for a proposal for our Deerfield Park concession stand. It's presently not open.
Use the mic.
Oh, I thought you could hear me.
The recording wall.
Oh. So this is for our Deerfield Park concession stand, which is not currently open. In the past, our soccer leagues would try to keep it open, but they've been, over the several years, have been having a tough time staffing it with their volunteers. So we're looking to go out to bid, to have a company come in and run the concession stand and have that opened also during the day, not just for games, but during the day when the kids are in the playground as well.
What's in it for the recreation department?
So all the proceeds would go back to our Play for All fund, which is a fund that we put together a few years ago, and that money goes back to playground equipment for special needs kids.
Are you looking for a monthly fee, or you're looking at percentage of sales?
No, a monthly fee.
Do we know what that is?
We do not have any idea what that's going to be.
We just passed a little while ago a vendor's license with Dell's to go to Deerfield Park to sell lemonade. What do we see here for competition? Are they going to prevent our pavilion people from selling Dell's or retail? I mean, the reason why I'm asking this is that when a lot of these vendor contracts come, as you know, like the food trucks and things like that, is with us awarding these contracts, would that negatively impact concession, the vendor of the concession stand?
I don't think so, because like Dell's and those trucks, they're in and out all day long. So this would be a stationary, obviously a concession stand, which is stationary, so they would be open at, certain times.
What's in there? What do we have in there?
Not much. A couple of refrigerators, no grills. No, there's no fryer-later, there's no grills.
Wasn't there stuff in there at one point? Does that come in?
I think there was a hot dog machine, a popcorn machine, that kind of stuff.
Okay, all right, so whoever the vendor would be responsible for putting in the grills, the refrigerators, do we have a sink?
Yep, there is a sink, yeah.
And then what about electricity? Do they pay for that?
Nope, the town would pay for all that, so they would just be using the facility.
Thank you.
This is to request a proposal, so.
Yeah.
I have a motion to go out to bid.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next up, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing the Parks and Recreation Department to allow and promote rental usage of the splash pad and pavilion at Deerfield Park.
I have a couple questions. So it's obviously all concrete over there? Is that mine? I'm sorry, were you gonna? Yeah, can we put some padding on there?
We did look at the padding when we were, doing the bidding process.
Okay.
And the problem with the padding is it does not last. So the companies that we worked with said they won't even warranty it because the rubber that they have put in other jobs failed. The water gets underneath it and it fails, and then it's more of a problem than. But all of the other facilities that we went to, it's all concrete.
Yeah, see some issues with that, but I little kids and cracking their eyes open. It's like, I don't know, so I guess the other question, so there's only 2 time slots available for that? 8 in the morning to 9:30?
So, all right, so it's going to be open during the day, every day.
Okay,
So this would be before we traditionally open it,
okay.
and then after hours. If people wanted to.
I like that, so everyone can use it during the day when it's hot.
Yep, it's open for everybody during the day.
So my only question is, how are you going to enforce this, like a birthday party? Because there's a lot of rules here that no grills,
Never heard of that.
who knows what they're going to bring if we're not there? Would there be a patrol or something that, I don't know how popular this is going to be. It probably
We don't either. We just, we had a couple of people come to us.
Yeah.
Once they saw that the splash pad was going in, and they had a couple of birthday parties coming up, so they asked us if we would rent it, and we just.
And like, what if a family shows up, doesn't know this birthday party's going on, they want to go on there, and then it could be a conflict? I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, absolutely. We thought about the same thing, and we're just kind of exploring it.
Yeah,
We don't know,
okay.
because we've never done this before, so we don't really know. But traditionally, when people are using the pavilion for a birthday party, people understand, it's a birthday party, so.
Did they sign anything, Bobby?
Do they sign anything?
Yeah, like, do we have something from the solicitor saying if somebody gets hurt, that we're not responsible?
Well, we would fall under our insurance policy.
No. That's what I don't want. I think, Anthony, you need to,
We're gonna discuss this with the trust.
what's that?
It's going to be handled in conjunction with the trust, the insurance lawyer and Anthony,
Yeah,
the final
there's
agreement.
got to
before
be
it's
some
reviewed.
sort of document that they sign if they're going to rent it.
We wanted to bring it before the council for the concept and the proposal. The legal documents will definitely be there before anybody rents it.
Yeah, there is a waiver in our packet here, but I don't think that waiver is sufficient at all. There's nothing about parents signing as or guardians on behalf of children, and I'm
Yep.
assuming this is going to be used by children, so.
Right.
Are there any alternatives to parks running this? I mean, could we contract it out, or, I mean, are there other alternatives?
I'm not sure, that would be it might be more of a stretch, but we'd have to look at it because the actual splash pad was purchased with grant funds. So I'm not sure we can
Right.
have a commercial entity operate it, would be my only concern, but, the council approving this and the concept and the plan of time and rates, we will make sure before we schedule birthday party 1, that it's signed off by our insurer, that we're covered and the town is not at stake of any issues of some slip and fall or whatever it might be before we even rent.
So the council takes no action. So let's just stop a family from bringing a cake to Deerfield Park and having 6 or 7 people sit around it. Why do we have to get involved?
Because numerous people have already called the Parks and Recreation Department to reserve it. And that's where the concept came from, and they just wanted to try something new, and we've always been pushing to try to find new ways to bring in revenue to help go back to the field. So it's a trial thing. If it doesn't work, we can always just get rid of it too.
And also, the splash pad is on a timer, so at the end of the day, the timer goes off, or the water is turned off automatically, so it wouldn't work after 3 o'clock. So they could obviously still have a birthday party there, but the splash pad wouldn't work.
Bobby, how did you come up with those figures, $75 and $100?
We just looked at other communities throughout the country, actually. It was all over, and that's the average.
Thank you. Can that be changed if?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, motion?
Is this contingent upon the town solicitor It's not in there.
Yeah, I would say that.
If you could just make the motion contingent upon the solicitor and the interlocal trust signing off on all necessary liabilities and policies.
So moved.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Bobby, thank you. Moving on to item 12, public comment. Anyone from the public like to speak, then come up to the pavilion, the podium. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.